as an economic growth zone is attracting business investment from the continent and abroad. Each country has their own travel requirements as well as health issues, which most business executives from abroad are unaware of. Now, to speak to us a little bit more about the appropriate risk management procedures on the continent, we're now joined by Annelie Smith, who's Corporate Executive at Risk Benefit Solutions, and she's in our Cape Town studios. Annelie, thanks very much for joining us. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. Do you know, I do quite a bit of traveling myself, and I've never sat down with someone called an executive risk benefit solutioner. So tell us a little bit about some of the issues that we should be considering, because I've got a sense that perhaps South African businesses in particular are not always taking these issues into cognizance.
No, you're 100% correct. And it's not just necessarily South African businesses, but it's also businesses around the world that's entering the African market. And in most cases, you're 100% correct. The risk management around those issues are the most important parts to look at. And what we find is that most businesses don't look at the in-depth detail of the risk management programs and the disaster recovery issues that they will have if anything happens to the executives, either in Africa or in South Africa for that matter. So the biggest concern we are seeing is that with the change in political factors in most of the countries in Africa, people arrive in those countries as if they go just on a normal holiday situation, instead of analyzing those risks beforehand to ensure they understand in which countries what is happening. So if you, for example, travel to south of Sudan, it's a much different scenario to go to the northern Sudan or even Nigeria or Kenya. So it's important for every executive to understand what insurance covers they have in place to allow them to be evacuated out of those countries, and also if there is a breakout of war, how they will deal with it within their businesses. And in addition to that, the kidnap and ransom scenarios are just getting worse by the day in some of those countries. Peter, so I think really executives have to look at how will they deal with those situations in each country, instead of just assuming that all the countries are the same.
All right, so typically what we tend to do is worry about yellow fever, taking malaria tablets, but it sounds like there's a whole layer of things that you need to consider. How do you go around, how do you start assessing risk profiles for each destination?
It's very important to incorporate your insurance broker into that process. A lot of companies can provide insurance covers for some of those risks from a travel perspective as well as a kidnap and ransom perspective. And with that, as soon as you buy your insurance covers, there are assistant companies that can actually assist you with the process behind the scenes in taking you through a risk analysis process, in taking into account which country you're going to, which part of that country you're going to, which level of executives are traveling into those countries, and what are you going to do in that country. So say, for example, you're a CEO of a business who wants to set up a new business in Uganda. It's very important that you understand the political environment in that space, for example, and also will you maybe be kidnapped because of the type of business you're going to set up in that country. So the assistance services will help you with that process. And then together with that, when we sit with your risk management committee in the corporate business, we will then be able to assist you in terms of saying what covers are required, what level of limits are required, and what extra do you need to take. For example, do you need to take a lot of cash with you? Do you rather need to take debit or credit cards? Remember, you're going into a dollar-based country, so you're going to buy rand equivalent insurance. So do you have enough cover? So for example, if you buy 10 million rand cover, it's not going to give you a lot of cover in a dollar perspective. So you need to go more to 100 million rand scenario to ensure that you have the right insurance in place.
All right, let's take a country that we all know very well, South Africa. What would you be telling people abroad in terms of the risk profile of South Africa?
Again, it's similar to every other country in the world, is make sure you understand the country that you're going to. South Africa, I think, has got a lot more good stories to tell than some other countries in Africa. And one big thing there is that we have got very good medical hospitals around us. So if you get injured in South Africa or you do have a heart attack in South Africa, there's a lot of good hospitals that can look after you. So there's a lot of good benefits. Obviously, there are the negatives in terms of riots and strikes that can turn extremely violent, the political situation that can change depending on where we are with our negotiations. In terms of high level of risk, don't walk at night, for example. Lock your doors, don't wear valuables. So again, it's nothing new than what you would do if you go to Los Angeles. Again, it's a country that you don't know. So South Africa is a beautiful country, and people come here with a lot of valuables like cameras, like jewelry. Make sure that you lock it in the safes in the hotel and don't walk around with it. Make sure that you understand which sides of a certain city is a good side and which is the bad side. Don't go and walk in Hillbrow, for example, at night if you don't understand where you're going. So it's just those typical basic rules. Understand what you can do and you can't do.
I had to travel to Europe recently, and one of the things that they insist on is getting that insurance just to get your visa. And I'm just wondering, we're talking about executives a lot here, but it seems to me that even ordinary people should be considering taking out adequate insurances when they travel, particularly across the continent.
You're 100% correct again. I think the one thing that a lot of people do as a big mistake is they buy limited insurance. So instead of going to an insurance broker who can assist them with assistance on how much they need to buy, they really just buy the basic covers, which doesn't really give you a lot of cover in euro, as I said previously. The other important thing is that a lot of your policies have got big exclusions on. So things like skydiving, scuba diving, skiing in the Swiss Alps, those things are excluded. Pre-existing conditions are excluded. So a lot of people buy those policies, they never read it. So they literally just use it to get their visa. There's very important emergency numbers on that they have to keep with them at all times. They have to understand the policy in detail. What can I do and can't I do? The other important thing they must also remember is also to make copies of their passports and keep it separate from the original passport. If your passport gets stolen in Europe, you need to go to the nearest embassy as soon as possible to reinstate and get a temporary visa so that you can, or passport to get back to South Africa. The other thing that is also important for people to go is to have a grab and go bag, as we call it. And really in there is the passport, your cash that you have, so that you can actually pay towards a taxi, for example, if you quickly need to get out of a bad zone. To have a water in there if you are kidnapped and you need something to drink. Have something to eat in that bag. So if anything happens, that you can grab and take that with you.
Annelie, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but it certainly does give us food for thought, and that the next time we buy a ticket that we should consider a whole range of other things and ask pertinent questions. But thank you so much for giving us some light on the subject. Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Peter.
All right. That was Annelie Smith, who's a corporate executive at Risk Benefit Solutions, urging us to think a little bit more about planning our trips beyond just getting vaccinations. All right. We're going to take a quick